Hello, this is Freda Liu, and you're watching The Shift. And what's The Shift about? We're talking about sustainability and everything that covers under that, whether it's ESG or just sustainability development goals. Now, on 3rd November 2021 at COP26, the IFRS Foundation Trustees announced the creation of the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB. On 26 June this year, the ISSB issued its inaugural standards, the IFRS S1 and S2, ushering in a new era of sustainability-related disclosures in capital markets worldwide. Here in Malaysia, the FTSE4Good Bursa Malaysia Index constituents are selected from the constituents of the FTSE Bursa Malaysia 𝗵𝗂 Index, screened in accordance with the transparent and defined ESG criteria. The index has been designed to identify Malaysian companies with recognized corporate responsibility practices, expanding the range of the benchmarks to the FTSE Bursa Malaysia Index series for the Malaysian markets. Kenanga Investment Bank Berhad is one of the 98 public listed organizations listed in that index to date. Now, why are standards and reporting important, and how do you begin? I'm here with Group Chief Sustainability Officer and Head of Group Marketing Communications, Kenanga Investment Bank Berhad, 𝗕𝗲𝗏. Good to have you here, 𝗕𝗏. And you know, we see all these standards and all that, and maybe some people are confused. I'm a little confused, but it is important, right? It is important so that people know who they're dealing with. So congratulations for getting and staying, right, in the index. So has this journey of sustainability been by design or default, since it's not mandatory, right, to get in there?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Freda. For us, I would say it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Kenanga is an investment bank and we are public listed. So by virtue of that, we are actually regulated by all three regulators, right? So the Bank Negara, Bursa Malaysia, as well as Securities Commission. And our regulators, like regulators around the world, have been emphasizing sustainability for a while now. And by default, so we've been on the sustainability track the last couple of years. The design part kicked in for us, I would say 2.5 years back, when internally we started talking about, you know, the need to really expand the scope of our sustainability, to really go beyond regulatory compliance, right? And to push for greater transparency, disclosure, accountability. And because we are public listed, it was very natural for us to look to FTSE4Good and their requirements. And that's what we did. And we sort of poured over, you know, almost 200 indicators. That's part of the requirement that was relevant for us. But the great thing was when we did that, we actually realized that a lot of what was required was actually embedded within our practice already. So what we needed to do really was to harness the right data and to make sure that it's published in the public domain. In a digestible manner. So that's what we did. And a year into our accelerated program, we released our first standalone sustainability report. That was, I think, March, April last year. And in that same year, in December, we were included onto the index. You know? Yeah, so
I'm just thinking what you just said, 200 criteria, right? And a lot of things, I guess, were already in place, but then, okay, we need to fine tune here and there. And for people who don't know, your company is already 50 years.
Correct. We were actually founded in 1973. So.
Founded by a woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
yeah.
so you've got one sorted in terms of the
agenda,
right?
Absolutely.
Now, okay, so how does Kenanga evaluate the environmental aspect and its connection with climate? When you think of a financial institution, right? How do you connect that with the E side of things?
I get that question a lot,
right?
Actually, Freda. Yeah, because a lot of them say, you know, you're a bank, you guys are not in manufacturing, you're not releasing plumes of CO2 into the atmosphere. So what can you do to decarbonize? It's a fair question. And it's actually, when we look at the answer, it's in two parts. First part of it, which is the most straightforward, is what we call at the enterprise level. And so that is us really looking at our carbon footprint as an entity within our premises. So for example, we operate out of Kenanga Tower, which is our HQ on Jalan Tun Razak. We've got about 20 branches nationwide. So what we do is we manage and we track our carbon footprint of our enterprise, our entity, and we try to decarbonize as much as we can. So it's very much like managing, because we operate out of office buildings, right? So it's very much like managing your home. And just like managing your home, the biggest source of energy consumption Do you want to take a guess?
Aircon.
Absolutely, air conditioning, right? So that's like, if you remember during COVID, when we were all stuck at home and we had our air conditioning running 24/7, and when we got the bill, fell off our chair. So that kind of scenario, right? So for us at Kenanga, in addition to the obvious, like we changed all our lightings to LED, which is something we've already done, we also work with this really amazing Malaysian startup, climate tech, and they're called 𝗏𝗏 Group.
Okay.
So that's spelled Z-O-G, 𝗏𝗏 Group, right? And they were founded by this bunch of really intelligent engineers.
Right.
And they've come up with a AI-based, AI is so big these days, right? An AI-based technology that allows your chiller system and your air conditioning to perform at an absolute optimal.
Okay.
So we've been working with them for 2 years now. And, you know, the results have been phenomenal. The recent months, we are clocking in up to 50% energy savings.
Wow.
So that's been amazing. It's great for the environment. So we're doing our part to carbonize, but it also translates into cost savings, right?
Right.
So
and you're working with a Malaysian startup.
Yes, absolutely. It's Malaysian people. So they're, it's really amazing.
Okay, I need to speak to these folks, right? And it's a great story, and how, so little things like that, right? When you look, you change your LED lighting, you get the best in terms of energy, and so that's one way. Okay, so that's the E part, right? What about the social and governance aspects then, right? You know, how do you, can you share some examples of what you all do in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. But just very quickly, going back to climate as well. So one aspect obviously is what we just mentioned, but the other aspect to that, just so I could just round it off, if you don't mind. Just the other aspect to that really is us using our resource, and this is where the action really is for institutions like us, right? And that resource actually is capital.
Okay.
Okay. So as you know, globally, you know, there is a massive funding gap when it comes to ensuring we meet our 2030 United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, right? And that funding gap goes up to $5 trillion every year from now till year 2030.
Okay.
So because we are in the financial system, so there is massive duty for us to make sure that when we capital allocate, we are channeling funding into, you know, the right businesses. We're catalyzing the right sectors, whether it's renewables, whether it's, you know, carbon capture. They all require funding and to help them scale. So that's actually our role as well, and that's what we've begun doing as well. We started screening our investments and our lending activities based on ESG lens as well. And the idea is not to punish anyone or to penalize anyone, you know, but to identify those who are perhaps are falling short and work with them to improve their ESG score. So that sort of rounds up the both aspects of our impact on the climate.
Right. So there's what you can do physically. Like that's your scope 1, scope 2 kind of thing, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and then I guess also in terms of the funds that you provide.
Yes.
You're moving in that area as well.
Yes, correct. So we're screening investee companies based on an ESG lens.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
So what do you do in terms of the social side? I think I'll go bit by bit in terms of, okay, social first.
In terms of social, like a lot of brands and companies out there, you know, DEI is a big feature for us, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think we alluded to that a little bit earlier, you know, that Kenanga, despite the fact we are a financial institution, very male-dominated sector, we were actually founded by 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲, a wonderful female entrepreneur. I'm not sure whether you've met her, but she's wonderful. So for us, gender diversity, the tone of that was set right from the very start, from the very top.
Right.
And you can really see that translate into things like our culture, or into things like, you know, our composition of our male versus female within our workforce. So we operate at a 51% female workforce. A lot of people find that quite surprising.
Right.
And when we track even further into details like gender pay ratio, we were happy to see that it was almost at parity.
Right.
So, you know, I think, but when you have the right leadership, the right culture, it translates into those kind of outcomes, which we are enjoying.
And I guess the people on the board, you would meet at least 30%.
Yes.
Right. Of course, that would be the standards. Now, what about governance?
As a bank, we are, again, very highly regulated.
Okay.
So governance is our mainstay, okay? It goes without saying, right? But above beyond just meeting regulatory requirements, we're really proud of our flagship program. We call it Fraud Awareness Week.
Okay.
But essentially, it's actually an entire month dedicated once a year to raising awareness around fraud, right? Our anti-fraud for that matter. And it goes beyond just within Kenanga. We rally, professional bodies, regulators, other industry players together, to promote awareness around it. So we have quizzes, we host international speakers, and a lot of fun and games. And this year again, it's happening in November. I'll be sure to send you an invitation.
Okay, so this is the whole educating the community at large, right? Customers to customers. Now, and again, of course, sustainability isn't and shouldn't be a department, right? How do you? I think this is one of the things, right? How many thousands of employees? How do you get all employees to come on board together? How do you communicate with them, right? In your other portfolio as a communications head as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a lot of emphasis. People talk a lot about, make sure you get board buy-in. You get your senior management's sponsorship on your event, on your program, right? And they're not wrong to emphasize that. But the truth of the matter is, after your budget's been approved, your plan's been approved, and the rubber really truly hits the road,
right?
You need to execute, you need to deliver. And that's, without the support of the entire organization for something like sustainability, it is just not possible. Okay, because at the end of the day, you need the manager on the ground to give you the data that you need, the stories that you can tell, to update the policies to meet requirements. So we need to make sure that, not only do we capture, the attention of, the board members or whatnot, but the entire organization's hearts and mind has to be captured as well. Right. And I truly believe the way to that really is to be able to articulate a compelling why. Okay, like why? Why is this data important? Why? Why? And when they say, because FTSE wants it, then you've got to be able to ask the why. Why is FTSE important, right? So you've got to keep chasing the why. And only when you do that, people feel vested in the journey with you. And then the objective really is that long after your interaction with them, they continue to think about, how can I participate? How can I contribute? That's really where you want to get your employees. Okay. And also for us, I think it's also important that the experience for employees is very much 360. So you want them to come to office, log on to the internet. There's a quiz there. There's something there for them to read. When they log on to our learning management system, there's a module there for them to, capacity build at their own pace. Right. And also face-to-face is really important. So for us, actually tomorrow we're starting our roadshow for the first time. We're going department by department. We have dialogues with the data owners and the head of departments on sustainability and issues that's relevant for them. Right, so the internal roadshow. Yes, internal roadshow. Roadshow. And so is that kind of conversation, right? It's not just going to be at the top down, FTSE4Good. So what's it got to do with me, right? Yes. Right. So you have to get down to why, until it resonates with me as an individual, as an employee of this organization. Now, of course, obviously, then your other stakeholders, right? And this is the part I know it's going to be challenging, not just for your organization, but every other organization would be your suppliers, third-party vendors, right? Under the Scope 3 aspect, right? So what's the progress with that? And, what are some of the initiatives trying to get them on board? That's a really tricky one, Freda. As a homegrown brand ourselves, a very proud one, we do tend to work with other homegrown brands in our supply chain as well. And most of the time, these are SMEs, okay? Like it or not, sustainability is not always front and center for them, right? We need to appreciate the fact that a lot of them are busy trying to keep the lights on. The people within their teams are double hatting and triple hatting. So it's going to take time. Right. Okay, Rome wasn't built in a day. We understand intervention is important, but we also understand patience is also very important here. So our ambition really is to partner them, just like how we work with our investee companies to understand where they're at and to help them along that journey. So that is the plan. One thing we're really careful of as well is, this whole conversation around just transition. Right. What we do not want is to pull the plug on a company because they're not meeting requirements, they don't have that policy, and then cause a negative repercussion. Yes. Right. I mean, they are supporting livelihoods, they're supporting the entire workforce, and within them, their supply chain. Right. So we are really mindful of all of that. But I must say, I think the one thing that's very encouraging is, I see a lot of tools and resources available now. Government agencies are doing a fantastic job. For example, SME Corp, I think they've launched this PKS Lestari, where it's designed specifically to help, SMEs on their ESG journey. So it's a matter of time. I think we just have to be patient. Yeah.
Okay. We can't give a deadline, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet. But I think that people are starting to realize the urgency. So it's a matter of just working with them and at their pace, at their level.
Right, unless it becomes at the top level, policy-wise, you know, government-wise, by this date, right?
Absolutely.
So, but I think you're right, understand where they're at and then work with them on that journey and help them as well, right? Now, okay, I don't know whether this will be a fair question, but there'll be SMEs watching this thinking, firstly, as you mentioned, expensive, tedious, right? And that is the domain of you big companies, right? So and probably, I think, it's reporting. Right? So is that a complicated and expensive exercise when, I guess if you can couch it for them so they say, actually, you've got to get started, or what can you do, I guess, to get them started on that journey?
I think, Freda, this question of cost, right? I think we need to really push past this paralyzing notion and narrative that ESG is expensive, it's so complex, it's so difficult. Only because I think the option to do a wait and see has expired. Okay. It's really behind us. The cost that you will need to get on board ESG, whatever that may be, I can assure you, it's not going to exceed the opportunity cost that you will have to bear if you're not ready. Let's put it that way, okay? If you're not ready for ESG, chances are your license to operate may be affected as regulations around it. We're already starting to see that, right? Are tightening the regulations and expectation. If you're not ready, chances are you're going to miss out on capital. Banks are starting to evaluate a certain way, so are investors. I think we've just spoken about that. And if you're not ready, you're going to miss out on a whole generation of consumers who are ready to pay more for sustainability products, sustainable products. And just one very clear example is in 3 months' time, the EU is putting in place what they call CBAM, right? Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, where if anyone who exports into the economy will need to do two things. One, disclose carbon emission. And two, possibly pay a tariff on it. So if you do not have clarity of your data, carbon data, how are you going to continue your business with them? And Malaysia is an export-based economy, right?
And that's 3 months from now.
Yes, October.
So you don't wait and see, you have to start.
You have to start, absolutely.
Actually, and then run, don't walk, right? Okay, now, so being seen as ESG ready should be seen as an investment rather than a cost.
Yes, I think it's definitely an investment, and the return may not be obvious and as immediate as one would expect. It will come in many different ways, right? When you resonate better with your employees, they may work harder, they may be more motivated. The return could come in a form where you can resonate better with your consumers, and they stay loyal with you. And so on and so forth.
Right. No, I was just doing this exercise, and I was talking to somebody about it. He said, look, we always have catering events, right? We always have catering events with with employees every year. Guarantee Chinese New Year, Raya, 𝗕𝗵𝗂𝗍, Christmas, right? You're just looking at who you choose to partner with in terms of your catering. You're already doing something, right? So sometimes something as
simple as that.
As simple as that, right? Okay. So I would just say, from your perspective, having worked for corporate, but also understanding like SMEs, and you say, don't wait and see, and you got to get started. But your advice to get started on this journey, the first step is?
Wow. Okay. I've been in corporate for over 20 years, and sustainability the last couple of years. And in that space of time, I've done certification, even as a company, we won awards and all the rest of that. But I will never proclaim myself as an expert. In fact, I don't think anybody can. How can we, when the whole of humanity is trying to figure things out still, right? How do we get ourselves up from this existential crisis, right? But, the point is that we do not have to wait till we are ready. I think the most important thing is to roll up your sleeves, get started, and keep asking questions. The most important commodity that any sustainability practitioner must have is actually just a curious mind.
Right.
You know, keep chasing the why, keep asking the why on the why, even when the answer is obvious, especially when the answer is obvious, right? And because only when you do that can you get to the very bottom of how you and your business is impacting the planet and its people. And only when you have a clear view of that can you formulate plans that are meaningful, take actions that are meaningful, and make change that is meaningful. You know? Yeah.
Right. And I think like in your case, when you were saying that, you know, this is Kenanga, and then we're like, okay, FTSE4Good, and then after that, okay, what do I do next? First thing, look at the 200 criteria.
That's right.
And what do we do? And that was just being curious and improving on that. Right. Okay. Any other last thoughts around this, Phing?
No, just get going.
Just get going.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here on the show. And of course, the 𝗕𝗲𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗂 from Kenanga Investment Bank. And you have been watching The Shift with Freda Liu.